Welcome to Talking Science Africa, a show where we bring you science and researchers who are doing amazing work in the science world. We ask them to explain it us in a layman language so that we can also get to know what they are doing. And today on the show, we host Dr. Joshua Rukundo. He is the Executive Director of Chimpanzee Trust, an organization that oversees Ngamba Island, which is situated on Lake Victoria, and which is a place where you can find chimpanzees. The closest place where you can find chimpanzees near Kampala. The reason why we are hosting him today is that he was co-author of a recent study published in Science, which examined the rationality of chimpanzees. We always know that chimpanzees are very smart, but to what extent are they smart? How rational are they? How close is their rationality to our rationality as human beings? Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for the amazing work that you are doing.
It's our pleasure to do it, yeah.
So most of the times when I'm interviewing people, the first question that I tend to ask them is, how did you end up doing this kind of work? So you are a veterinary doctor.
Yes.
Veterinary doctor have too much work to do. We have hundreds and hundreds of animals to look after. So how did you end up dedicating your work to chimpanzees?
Chimpanzees particularly. Yeah. Okay. I'll start as why I became interested in veterinary work. Growing up in Kampala, we used to go to the village every holiday, and one thing that I used to find fascinating was my grandmother. My grandmother was the village herbalist, but she used to also treat animals, particularly the goats, the poultry, and even the cattle. And she used to just simply mix herbs, and I used to find it very, very fascinating the way she used to restrain the animals and administer the concoctions she used to make, and people used to call her, and she had this additional passion and love for animals. So that is what attracted me first to, literally animals particularly, but also their health and management. And she used to explain to me the different types of ticks that would be on them and how the concoction would help to remove the ticks, the things should make them drink, what kind of treatment she was giving and why she was giving it, and all that, etc. So that gravitated me towards medicine, so to speak. But with time, as I went about my work, I got fascinated by wildlife in general. So that led me to pursue veterinary medicine at university. And while there, I of course gravitated to wildlife because that was my particular interest. And while I was training, I used to, whatever time I would get when I would be on holiday, I would always volunteer at the zoo here in Entebbe. And while volunteering there, under the mentorships of doctors like Afema, who were there at that time, Dr. Sifat Ludwig, I got fascinated by primates themselves, because I went to see she would be administering, that is Dr. Afema, administering drugs that we use, injections that we use as humans, and I was wondering how is it that these primates use the same kind of drugs. And initially I had a huge fear for chimpanzees, because even then, they were considered very dangerous. They were, access to them was restricted. You had to be having a certain level of training before you would be allowed to work in the chimp house and the zoo. But simply observing them on the chimp island, which was already there at the zoo, you went to see that they had a certain level of intelligence. And actually, honestly, I didn't really think I would ever have the opportunity. For me, my dream was to work at the zoo. And I applied several times, but unfortunately, so I didn't get a job there. So I went back to doing wildlife and domestic animals until the opportunity to come to Ngamba Island presented itself. A colleague of mine whom I studied with knew about my passion, and he had gotten employment there. Then he had also a lot more passion for gorillas, generally primates. So when he got another opportunity to work with the gorilla doctors, he even recommended to management and let me know, and I applied, and fortunately I got the job. And since then, I've literally been hooked to the chimpanzees. Working with them, generally, it never gets boring, and it's always exciting, and we continue to discover new things about them every single year. And that is why we do some of these experiments and tests that we do with them.
Yes, thank you. So there are so many people, I think like 98% of Uganda's population has never seen chimpanzees.
Yes.
So for such kind of an audience, and for you who deal with chimpanzees nearly on a daily basis, or you are always with them, and for many years, how would you describe the personality of chimpanzees?
Well, we, as scientists, we already know that as primates, they are very close to us. They are part of the 5 primates, of which we are also part. And genetically, we are very similar. And that means we share a lot in terms of physiology, in terms of the biology itself that we have as humans, together with chimps, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, other primates. But we're talking about the great apes specifically. And that similarity has been exploited over time because it's not us to discover that first. Animals generally have been exploited for the benefit of man for hundreds and hundreds of years, I think as much as man existed. We've tamed animals for domestic use, for labor, for food, and we've continued from the past and now to continue to use animals to test drugs. Early man used to observe what animals would eat to know that this is now edible, and then they would go ahead and consume it. So also, when medicines were first, I'll use the term loosely, were being first used in early times, it was not literally known as medicine, maybe for eating certain herbs or eating certain vegetables or eating certain leaves to treat certain conditions, maybe stomachache or whatever. We believe that it initially came from observing animals, and many of the animals that were very closely observed were those that were similar to us physically, and that was primates, and particularly great apes. So logically, as humans developed over time, they started testing the drugs and chemicals and the response to them. All early scientists would always test drugs on lab rats, on rabbits, on whatever, and eventually on primates, because certain times the reactions are different depending on the species, but the closest resemblance or the closest physiology would be the apes, and particularly the chimpanzees. The chimpanzees were easier to get a hold of, easier to manage when they were still young and babies, and easier to observe over time. So most of the vaccines that whose benefit we enjoy today, vaccines like hepatitis, etc., were initially tested and tried out in chimpanzees. And we also know chimpanzees, because of their physiology, were first sent to the moon as the first literally ape that was there, because the response to space would mirror what would happen in humans. So that is how over time we've exploited animals, and particularly the chimpanzee, and that is why with time it became a problem, because they were being actively hunted in Africa to be used in biochemical laboratories in the developed world from way back from the 30s, 40s, and 50s to date, for testing cosmetics, for testing vaccines, for testing response to certain drugs and chemical reactions across the board, And the closest they could get to mimicking what would happen in a human being would be the chimpanzee. And their population ended up decreasing over time because of their own behavior, because chimps don't replicate as much as rabbits, they don't replicate as fast as pigs, they don't replicate as fast as fowls that are used, or rats. So their population got decimated, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, because a chimp will probably have 2 or 3 babies, if it's lucky, most likely 2 in its lifetime. They care for their babies mostly throughout their life. So the replacement was not enough, and that is why we have the crisis right now, and they are listed as endangered species because their population numbers have really gone low. Yeah.
Okay, that's important, and that I had actually not thought about us. So connected to that, what's the history of Ngamba Island? How did we come to have it?
Yes, Ngamba Island is a chimpanzee sanctuary located on the island, Ngamba Island, which is in Lake Victoria, and it is the one and only sanctuary for chimpanzees in Uganda here. It started as a joint collaboration between a number of conservation agencies to address a problem of chimpanzee trade, pet trade at that time. Illegal pet trade and bushmeat, but mostly the pet trade, which I've just alluded to, because these chimpanzees were being exploited, by big pharma for experiments. So the source was in Africa, and Uganda during that time in the 50s, 60s was, a good place to do that kind of business because of the insecurity and instability that we had. So the Jane Goodall Institute, together with other local institutions like Department of Wildlife at that time and other international conservation agencies, got together to try and provide a solution to the illegal pet trade that was happening. In its initial beginning, as stability came in, then enforcement was happening. In the early 80s, animals were now getting confiscated at airports, at border control agencies, as they were being smuggled abroad for all these different purposes, either for the pet trade or the bushmeat, or most especially for sale onto laboratories and other places where they experiment them. So as they rescued them, they had nowhere to put them. So that is when the idea of the sanctuary was set up, because at that time the problem was quite huge in Africa. The sanctuary was set up as a place where the rescued and orphaned chimpanzees could now find a home after all the trauma they had gone through. So in 1992, I believe, the sanctuary was opened. But of course, it was initially where they were being kept at the zoo. That time it was still called the zoo, until it didn't have enough capacity to hold all the rescued animals, and the sanctuary was set up. It started as a project under JGI and became an independent entity, I think, in 2005. And that's when the trust itself was registered to manage the sanctuary.
Let's turn to your study now.
Yes.
This study, published in Science Journal, tested the rationality of chimpanzees. And rationality is a trait that has always been sought to be something that is reserved for human beings.
Yes.
Completely human beings, not the primates that are close human beings. So, first, what inspired this study?
Well, most of the studies in chimpanzees have been inspired by historical studies. If we were to roll back the years a little bit, a young lady, Dr. Jane Goodall, at that time she was a young lady, was dispatched by a world-famous anthropologist, Dr. Leakey, to come to Tanzania to study chimpanzees, to observe their behavior and learn a little bit about them, because they were being used in experiments at that time. Like I said already, one had been sent to the moon, and chimpanzees were known in the developed world, and they were known to be intelligent. So she came to observe them in their natural habitat, and she observed them for several years. So when she made a publication and she demonstrated through her observations and her very carefully written notes of how she was seeing that chimpanzees were using tools to get rewards, and specifically they were using tools like a rock to break nuts, using twigs to fish ants out of ant hills, levers to move heavy objects. They would use a stick or something as a lever. The tool use itself at that time was a reserve for humans. It was only humans that were known to use a tool. Actually, the word tool was defined as something that is used to make work easier by human beings. So I remember the famous quote that Dr. Leakey said after she made one of her presentations, that probably we need now to redefine the word tool. Because some of these things as humans, some of the use of tools and use of thought, the ability to have a soul, the ability to have compassion, was typically reserved for humans, until we continue studying animals and we say, really, can't they also have this as well? And the more we study the chimpanzees, we come up with these questions. We're like, how do they make decisions, for example, to become close to another chimpanzee? to work with another chimpanzee to solve a problem. Because initially our studies were to see how they cooperate with each other. They were cognitive studies too. Do they understand a problem? Can they solve it? If they can understand the problem and solve it, if the solution requires help from another individual, would they seek that help? What decisions would they make to decide who of the other individuals they could select to work together, to cooperate? And those were initial studies. By the time I was joining, those are studies that were being done on chimpanzees and how they would cooperate to solve problems. And of course, we designed it in such a way that as soon as they solve a problem, they get a reward. Now we thought that can they take it a step further? Because these cognitive studies, we compare with humans, the way we also go through the thought process and the way we make decisions. And we already know that that chimpanzees, their brains and development and the way of thought is equal to, a human being up to a certain age. Then there our brains develop much faster, and that's what gives us the superior intelligence, so to speak. So our study was saying that if they're given certain clues, would they use those clues to infer, to make a decision to get a reward? For example, we know that there's this famous game that we do with children, peekaboo. Peekaboo. Children and infants, let's specifically say infants, learn through that game to understand that if something cannot be seen doesn't mean that it's not there. When you cover an object, initially as a baby they would assume it's not there. But once you uncover it, reveal it, uncover it again and reveal it, their brain makes those synergic connections through their neurons and everything. We'll not get into that. And they make the connection that they can use the cue that either they have seen it before, or maybe when they touch and feel a lump under, there is something under it. So we wanted to see, is that similar with chimpanzees? If we give them certain clues, will they use those clues to determine that there's a reward or something? And the way we designed our tests, particular time, we were seeing, we'd give them cues. We use rewards. We use words like pieces of bananas, pieces of apple, pieces of food, basically. That's what motivates them. And we say, okay, if I show you several containers, and on each container I put a picture of a fruit, would they now be able to make that connection that where I see a picture of a stone, there is a stone, or where I see no picture, there is nothing, and where there is a picture of a banana, there is a banana inside that. And they snapped that up very quickly. They learned very quickly. Then we took it a step further. We're like, what if there is no visual cue? What if it is sensory, maybe to hear or to see again? And would simply put something in the container, and we shake both of them. One is empty, one has something. And we, of course, in scientific experiment, you do controls, you keep changing the variables to make sure that there's consistency with their decision making. But they would also be able to make those decisions with time, not immediately, but they would with time learn and know, okay, this particular sound they're hearing is actually a coin. This particular sound sounds like it could be a fruit. This particular sound sounds like maybe a rock where it is not a reward. And that is how we came up with the way they rationalize in making some of these simple decisions. Those were more simple experiments. Then we went to took it even a step further. If we trained one chimpanzee and it learned, would another learn the same by simple observation or from its colleague? And then we would bring in another chimp maybe to watch from another room and see if they can infer without going through the experiment themselves. And when they come to the experiment, they immediately make the correct decisions simply by observing. So those are simple experiments, but they help us to understand the way their brains work, and also to help us understand that they can make rational decisions. If, say, in the wild, they know with time that if like on Ngamba Island, we have an electric fence. Let me use a real life example. We have an electric fence that separates us. And if you touch it, you get shocked. How do the chimps know not to touch it? It is through try and error, probably. But some of them have never touched the fence. And that is because they have simply observed the others, or they have been taught by the others not to. They may not actually rationally think about why is it. Yeah, there have been experiments that I've done with monkeys where you hang a banana and then if they touch the banana, they get punished. And then they bring in another monkey, and if the other monkey touches the banana, both of them get punished. And with time, other monkeys that are brought in and don't know the reason will prevent the others from touching the banana just simply by inference. So we know that now they can make decisions not knowing why. But that is also similar to humans. So that the rationality has two sides of the coin. Sometimes we make irrational decisions, or we just simply follow what we've been taught without rationalizing as to why it happens. So we also run those similar instances. But we know that in the wild they can make decisions on whether to be able to confront another chimpanzee group if they decide, whether they can read the situation and say, are we in danger or not, and then make a conscious decision either to confront or to evade. So those are the kinds of experiments we run, and we've seen that chimpanzees actually make rational decisions a little bit better compared to other animals.
That's very important. So, given that you have worked with chimpanzees for many, many years, did the findings of this study surprise you?
Not particularly. We run these studies to give evidence, but you have the theory. That is how you come up with a study. You say, this is the theory, this is what we expect, and then we try to prove it, whether it actually is true or it is untrue. So already from working with them, we see it. We see it in day-to-day interactions with them. I like to tell a story of how, in my interaction with the chimps, they recognize the roles that we play, even as we work with them. They know those that care for them, they are those that feed them, and I'm here to test that rationally or scientifically. They know that this is the person who makes them feel better, or so to speak, their doctor, so to speak. And they know that. And how do I infer to that? Is because many times when I'm observing them, I'm coming to examine them, some of them, when they have an injury, actually show you, so you don't have, without knocking them down, they show you. And then they expect you to do something about it. One particular touching moment, one very shy chimp, never interacted, came back from the forest and hung back and actually actively started trying to get my attention. So, I was also a bit cautious. I was like, this is a chimp that I've never interacted with. It's a bit shy. I don't understand it very well. It could be, having violent intentions. But this female chimp actually had got a nasty injury. It had a fractured arm. And it put out its arm, and of course immediately I realized it was injured. I forgot, I took through all caution to the wind. I came and did a thorough examination. But going through the process to make that decision, because it was in absolute pain, and it knew it was even going to be in more pain through my examination, but it rationalized and said, I will go through this pain because it's worth it. I'm going to get the help that I need to ease this pain. So already that shows you that there's a level of intelligence, that they know that it's not simply, I have to bring the attention of my carer. And this particular carer, not anyone, is the one that is going to be able to give me the kind of support and care that I need. And that is a little bit where they're a little bit more unique, or we want to say they're a bit more intelligent compared to other animals. A dog will also do the same. If it's injured, it will come and try to show the owner. But most instances, it will, very rarely, of course they also evolve with time, allow you to inflict more pain to be able to heal it or to make it feel better. But that is one thing I can give as an example, although of course we would have to run lots of tests. But just simply by I've visited other sanctuaries and I've seen where other apes, gorillas and chimpanzees have been trained through different kinds of rewards to be able to offer their arms to give blood, or to allow certain things to be done to them for a reward. Yeah, but they make a conscious decision and say it's worth it. Yeah, So that is also a level of rationalization that they make. They say, you know, I can go through this because I think I'm going, the reward that at the end of the day is worth whatever trouble I may go through.
Good. So when chimpanzees feel unwell, they know that they come to you and know
Yes.
that you are the person who can treat them, and
Or
they feel better.
or they decide to avoid you because we do annual health examinations, and as the veterinary team at the sanctuary, we've been forced to juggle around the times that we do it. Yeah, because with time they learn. I don't know if they can tell seasons, but we think we can, because we used to do it always at a particular time of the year. But you find now at that particular time of the year, you always want to start with the difficult ones. They don't show up. They don't show up, and yet they have been there all the time. So now, once we juggle it, like you say, tricking them, we are able now to get them. So they now know that it can happen anytime. So they know that if I don't want to go through this, I will simply not return, because we allow them to return voluntarily in the evenings until I feel that the experiment is over. Then I will show up again. So they know. That's why many times we even I have to remain consistent in how I present myself to them, such that they learn to have a level of trust and know that not every time will I be coming to cause or an indicator of possible pain or injury or disturbance to their nature of life. And that is why it's important as people who deal with animals to always have that relationship and contact with them, such that you are able to do other things that you want to do at the times you need to do them for their benefit without them being very suspicious of you, but generally build their trust. Yeah, so in my early days, whenever I would be putting on a white coat, they would suddenly become apprehensive because now they know it is health check, so I'm going to do something. Whenever I would, they have the visual, they can see the clinic and they see now it's open and they're like, okay, something is going on here. And I think we need to avoid
being near.
To being near, yes. But other times when they even want certain rewards, because we do what we call positive reinforcement. Whenever they do what it is you ask them to do, you give them a reward, a small reward, just like how you treat children. Then next time when you ask them to do something or when you expect them to do something, they know there's a reward at the end and they'll be more willing to do it. Yeah.
So you mentioned something that piqued my interest, which is some difficult ones or stubborn ones.
Yes.
How stubborn, can you describe a stubborn chimpanzee?
Well, each chimpanzee has their own individual character. They are not the same. Just like also as human beings we have. And even their character evolves with the different interactions they have with the different chimps and also with us, the people that care for them. Their behavior, their moods, their response to certain stimuli evolves depending on the environment that they're in. But there are those who are, we like calling them the difficult ones, depending on difficulty in what. There are those which are within the community, they are the troublemakers. They are the ones that pick on others. They're the ones that start fights. They're the ones that instigate. Like I said, working with chimps is fascinating. You never get bored. We now know those that just like to cause fights. They don't get involved, but they can hold a grudge against another individual and instigate the others to attack that individual if they have crossed them. We know those, which has been done experimentally, that they know that to be able to get something from another individual, I need to also offer something. So we've seen them actually butter. I have a piece of jackfruit, very favorite. I'll give it to you if you'll give me the bigger portion of posho that you have. Or like the females, if they are in season, the males know that they have to offer something to the female to get the opportunity to mate with them. We see it also in the way they relate with each other to create, call them friendships or bonds with each other. But we also know there are those that, like I said, cause trouble. They instigate fights with the others. They pick on the others. They are bullies. They always pick on the others. Even now, the way they respond to us, there are those that, like I said, might be a bit difficult, but they are difficult because they have also a motive of what they want. We have chimps that we expect them to go out every morning, so we open the doors and they will simply refuse to go until you give them an extra reward. Yeah, but you also don't want to create a certain behavior that you always reward them even for doing bad. So we've just, and this is unintentional. The guys now over time learn, okay, instead we'll call back the one that they don't like and to force them to come out. And that's what I say by being a bit difficult. They don't go with the flow. They don't just simply follow what the others do. They have their own individual characters. They make their own decisions independent of what the group might have decided. There are those which, like specifically talking about the annual health checks that we do, we have to sedate them and take them in. Now, the sedation, we've tried with time to make sure as pain-free as possible. We use hand injections. But an injection is an injection. Even adults fear them. So they know inevitably it will happen. They will maybe work with you, or they will cooperate, but then they'll reach a point and then they stop cooperating. Even if you offer a reward, or even if you offer a threat or something, and simply make it difficult for you. There are so many stories. If I could tell you, for example, sometimes you have to dart them. If I can't do an hand injection, maybe it's not safe for them, it's not safe for me, and I have to do darting them. But they know that to dart them, I have to put them in a small space. They will refuse to go there. Or if I am successful in putting a small space, they may actually willingly go into the small space. There's a particular chimp that would come with a lot of hay. Then he would simply keep throwing the hay around because he knows it makes it difficult for me to see where to dart.
Yeah.
That is the level of intelligence that chimpanzees have. I've not seen that with any other animal. Yeah, they will roll around at breakneck speed because they know it is very difficult for you. There is only one particular part that you want to target. Yeah, and they make it as difficult for you as possible. So those are ones that say, yeah, we always aim for places which have flesh so that you don't cause injury in any other part. So they make it as difficult for you as possible. We sometimes collect samples, maybe feces or urine, and we wait for them to urinate. Then we hold a stick with a cup at the end, and we collect the urine because we want fresh urine. And the chimp will come, knows it wants to collect urine. It is hanging there, and to start urinating, Then you put it, and then it stops. Then you move it away, then it starts again. Just it knows what your intent is. It is losing nothing, but it just says you're not going to get through that easily.
You're not going to get this urine.
So that is why it says sometimes they're just a bit difficult. But it's part of their nature, and with the individuals, it's part of their character. And we know maybe this time it's not in the mood. Maybe we'll wait for it a little later, because some of them, even if you try to bribe them or offer them a reward, they'll refuse. Others, you have to offer them a reward. When I just started out, they used to bully me, so to speak. They always want to bully the new people, the new individuals. They would snatch my specs, but they would not destroy them. So they know that they're delicate enough. So they don't want to cause damage, but they want to bully you, so to speak. Snatch your specs and then spend an hour with them, then hand them back. Or in exchange for a treat, or sometimes simply give it back to you. But those are things that we learn in terms of working with them. You get to learn their behavior, and they respond to you also as well. If you are kind to them, they are kind to you. If you are hostile to them, they are very brutal. They can be very brutal to you. They will target you specifically. Yeah. So that is also why it is very important that if you are a person that works with animals, you like working with them, especially chimpanzees.
As a stranger, if I go with you to the island, we are together, or I go around, how will they respond to me?
They are very protective of their environment, and even in the wild, they are very territorial. Let me use that word. And also territorial in terms of the community members. Even with other stranger chimps, their immediate response is to be hostile to them. Why? Because you're going to come and compete for the same resources that we have. So just like humans, you're suspicious and hostile to strangers, naturally. With time you learn that maybe facial expression or whatever, you may be a bit more open to them, also depends on your character. But naturally their first response will be cautious. If you are with a person they trust, like me or another carer, they might allow the person who is with you benefit of doubt to say, okay, if he's with so and so, maybe it's acceptable. But if you are alone, they will definitely be hostile towards you. They are very territorial, and if you enter their space, you are an intruder. And an intruder must be gotten rid of. That is why we are cautious about visitors, the proximity they may have to the chimps, both in the wild, because you are entering their space. And there is a certain safe distance where you'll be able to respond, or where they also feel, yes, we are used to seeing human beings coming, like maybe in Chihuahua, they come and watch us all day. But there are other places maybe where that has not happened, and the sight of a human makes them immediately cautious, and they become defensive. So that was what also has fueled human-wildlife conflict in some of the places where it's happening. They either try to avoid you, or when they meet you and they can't avoid you, they become aggressive. They attack. It is not generally aggression, but they are protecting the territory in which they are, and they consider you an intruder. So that is what would be happening. They would be aggressive towards you. Now, at the Ngamba Islands, even takes it a little bit step further. They see you as a stranger, you are an intruder, you are in their space, they believe you shouldn't be there. And they can tell that these are, usually it happens, they know now, like for example, let me break it down a bit easier. It's a tourist site, so we get strangers every day. So the strangers come and go. So those ones, they have no problem with them, apart from a few individuals. Then there are those who stay, maybe volunteers. Then they're like, this one we saw yesterday, we've seen today. They are not supposed to be here. Then they become aggressive towards them. They get rocks and start throwing at them. Yes, because they say, now, who is this one? We don't know. So they show their aggression towards them. They vocalize, they display. In other situations, other sanctuaries, I've seen they get feces because they know that humans don't like feces and throw the feces at you. They spit at you. So they express their displeasure. Yeah, as best they know.
They want you to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Until you approach them, now you have to take the step to approach them and show that you're a friend. Then you still go through the process of acceptance, which may be short or long, depending.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I want you to speak about is you have 54 chimps.
Yes.
At the island. So how do the 54 chimps, do they know each other? Do they recognize each other? Are they friends to each other? Do they move in one group?
Chimps generally are gregarious. Gregarious means they live in communities. They depend on each other for security, for food. Just like in the wild, just like human beings do. We form a community for security purposes, security of food, safety from predators and things like that. So what we've done at Ngamba is unique. We've created or forged the community from the different rescues. So they have come from different situations, and we've made them live together and form a community. And forming a community means now they have different castes within the community. In any community, there are those that are leaders, there are those that are disciplinarians. I'm not talking about humans. There are those that are, like I said, the troublemakers. There are those that are the carers. There are those that are providers, etc., etc. So that's exactly how it is at Ngamba. They recognize each other. They know even if it's not visual, from voice, from vocalizations of each other. So they even try to find each other, as they would in the wild, in a normal wild community. They call out to each other when they're out in the forest to make sure, okay, so and so, hey, hello, are you there? In their own language. And so they even when one of them is missing, they recognize it and realize it. And when that person resurfaces, they welcome them back with joy. Because, for example, we might have to retrieve a chimp for medical reasons. Maybe it is sick and we have to treat it in isolation, and we have to take it away and separate it from the group, maybe for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even longer. When it comes back, it is welcomed back because they recognize their colleague, and they even embrace. They come and embrace and welcome them back. So even some of them which may not come back in the evening and spend the night, when these ones come out, these ones are waiting for them to greet them, and so they recognize each other, they call out to each other, and they also form special bonds with individuals. You will find chimps that are more closer to certain other individuals, and that is something that we also study over time to see what are those interactions. They interact with each other and show bonding through certain behaviors like grooming. Grooming is a behavior where they care for each other or show care for each other by removing dirt and parasites, and whether they're existent or not. And it's a relaxing kind of benefit that the recipient gets, and it shows a connection between the two individuals. So we also study that, who do they bond with, and that helps us to determine what is the hierarchy, because low ranking will always submit to the higher ranking, and part of the submission is always also to either offer them food or to give them their space or to groom them, so that next time there's a fight, don't attack me. I'm your friend. I'm always here to take care of your needs. So as a community, they have those different connections and they have those different interactions amongst themselves.
So when they fight, actually, do you intervene to separate them?
The fights, because the setup of Ngamba, we have a forest, which is the biggest part of the island, about 95%, and where they are allowed to go out and live as they would in the wild. And that's what makes it unique. It's not like a zoo where they're confined and just have maybe a short time out. We want them to behave as they would in the wild. Yeah. So they have a big forest to themselves, and they will have fission and fusion. They will bond, they will fight. And when they fight, normally they fight to make a point. The males want to show dominance. There are those who are bullies and take pleasure in fighting and injuring others. Then there are those who gang up against others. Like, for example, a bully might attack another chimp, then they call the support of the others, please come and help me, this one is picking on me, and they come and help. Or they choose not to because they say, no, this one is such a bad bully, he will also attack me in the process. Now, when it comes to interventions, we typically do not unless the life of a chimp is threatened. But like I said, it's a forest, so many of these interactions we don't see. We can only hear them. So sometimes we only see the results thereafter. Recently, we lost a chimp, which was very, very unfortunate. It was not unwell, it was healthy, but it was a result of a fight, and not that it was killed per se, but it got injured in the process, and it was a fatal wound, and unfortunately it bled out and died. So those are some of the consequences that happen from some of those unfortunate interactions. They may not be intentional, but we do know, even from Dr. Jane Goodall's study and the study that has gone on for the last 60 years, that sometimes they're intentional to kill their colleagues, or even when they're hunting to kill other animals. So they can also be intentional to injure themselves, even as members of the same community.
Let's turn to their communication. When is their vocalization? That's how they communicate. Do you understand what they are always communicating? Can you communicate? How do you communicate to them, actually?
Okay. When you work with animals, or generally if you work with animals, you get to learn their language a little bit. You may not get fluent in it, but you get to learn. So their voice box is not as well developed as us, and their tongue, so they are not able to form words like us. Yeah, and that is one of the big differences between humans and chimps. But the vocalizations, there are some vocalizations which are universal, and it is coupled with a facial expression or body language, so to speak. So the language is not only the vocalizations, but also the expression that you give to reinforce whatever it is they're trying to communicate. So we learn and know, most especially from combining the two, what vocalization is it making? Is it a pant? Is it a grunt? Is it, and coupled with the facial expression, then we can tell that it is being aggressive, it is throwing a tantrum, it is seeking help, It is greeting, yeah, or it is asking for something, or asking either for help or to get your attention or different things, or it is even simply saying, keep your distance, don't come near me. So those are the simple communications. It is really basic and simple, but you learn it over time. And they are very expressive in the way they do. So it's pretty easy to learn their language, so to speak. Yeah. And how do we communicate with them? Sometimes we use the same vocalizations. Like, for example, we know they get feeding at particular times, so they'll show up. But times when we want to call them, we know the panthoods for calling them. We know the panthoods for greeting. We know the panthoods. They also say thank you when they're happy. So we also know that when they do something, we also say thank you. So we know those vocalizations with time. And also the facial expressions. There's a way in which they bar their teeth, either to show fright or to show submission, and we also do the same. And we teach our team, and part of the programs we do in the community for management of human-wildlife conflict is for them to learn some of those cues that the chimps can read and show that maybe I'm not a threat. Like we teach children that go to school and have to go through forests and encounter these animals. How do they, instead of provoking them by throwing sticks and yelling and screaming, how can they respond so that the chimp understands that this is not a threat and they're simply passing through, and they don't become aggressive towards them and injure them in the process? Or even if they attack them, what they can do to show submission so that they don't get severe injuries. So that has come from simply observing them and doing the same things they do to them and seeing how they respond to it. And then we replicate that with some of the trainings that we do for new staff and also for our community programs.
Taking you back to one of the issues that I've already spoken about, which is chimpanzees usually want to be a group,
yes,
or a community. And the chimpanzees that you have at the island come from different places. So how long does it take for, if you bring in a new chimpanzee, how long does it take for this chimp to be integrated in the community, to be welcomed by us?
That is a very interesting question. And there is no one answer to that. It is dependent on so many factors. It is dependent first on the sex of the animal. In the wild, males typically stay with the same group their entire lives. Unless the group splits, then they can be part of a new group, but with community members that were part of an old group. It is females that can move from one community to another. The young females, when they get of age, puberty, or when they're going to, ready to give birth, they move out of the community they were born in and join another community. And that has helped with genetic diversity between the different communities. But the males stay with that group. And from that already they have innately more welcoming to females. A new female is more acceptable than a male. A male is seen as new competition for the females. Male is seen as a threat to the hierarchy of whoever is, maybe it is big and it will threaten the top dog or the boss or the alpha males, or it is in the middle and will still threaten those ones. Or it's, even if it is small, it will still threaten those other males that are at that level, and they will be hostile towards it. So males are a lot more difficult to integrate, so they take longer. Second, it is their capacity to be able to create bonds or connection with other chimpanzees. Now, some of them have innately that ability. They reach out. Then there are those that are loners, maybe because, like I said, they have also gone through different situations. There are chimps that we have rescued and received that have never ever seen any other chimpanzee. Yeah, from their understanding. So maybe they were captured when they were infants, or they were born in captivity, and they only know how to interact with humans. And they have been brought up like that, maybe as a house pet, and now it is in a situation where it is seeing other chimpanzees, and it needs to learn how to connect with them, and that takes a process. Then there are those that maybe their character, they are, let me use the word loosely, disrespectful. Yeah? So those ones also makes it more difficult. Those that don't want to submit to authority, so to speak, or to submit to the seniors, it also takes them a lot longer because they'll keep getting picked on until they show that they can submit. So many times it depends on the individual character and how they're able to read the community and know how to respond to the different individuals. The quicker they know how to create who can be my friend, who can back me up, whom can I also back up, who is a potential enemy and whom should I avoid, because some of them, they try to be too friendly and they want to be friendly with aggressive chimps and they get injured. So that takes us back a little bit in the term of integration. So it is a myriad of factors. So our process is very methodical and systematic. We already know the chimps that are friendly. We already know that those that are not as aggressive. We start with those ones. We start with the same age group. We start with the females because they are a bit more accepting, especially of younger chimps, because most of the rescues come as younger chimps. So they have a motherly instinct. And if we can get one of them to adopt them, then they can offer some protection to them. So depending also on how they make those connections, the period of time it takes for integration varies from chimp to chimp. It can be as quick as a couple of months to as long as years.
And on leadership, that hierarchy of leadership, how do we come to have that hierarchy? Is it the chimp that has stayed there for a long time? Is it the chimp that proves to be the toughest that becomes the leader? How do we come up with that leadership hierarchy?
That is another very interesting thing that I found working with chimps. Working with other wildlife and generally working with animals, it is usually the meanest, the biggest, the toughest that comes out as the leader of the pack. Apart from a few other species, maybe like wolves. But with chimps, it's unique. It is that individual that will offer the element of strength, but also protection. Yeah. So to be able to have those elements, they need to be an individual that also knows how to make connections with other chimps, because however big you are, if you don't have other chimps backing you up, and particularly the females play a big role in, let's say, I don't want to use the word determine who the alpha will be, but they play a big role in offering their support to a particular individual that will eventually become the alpha male. The alpha males, you may be a big, strong, stronger than all the other males, but if you don't have the support of the females, you'll never be alpha. And it's a little bit similar to us humans. The heirs in certain families are selected by the females because they believe this is the person or individual that will be able to provide the protection and stability that we need in the community. And it is simply like that. There are a number of articles that have been done by local journalists on the chimp politics, because also it depends on the alliances that they have with other peers, because oftentimes we've seen them ally, like I can ally myself to you because I know with your support I'll become the alpha, or I'll help you to become the alpha. Then I'll come and stab you in the back and throw you over because we have the same allies. And that is a story that is very much loved by journalists that come to Ngamba. One of the alpha males came to become alpha by supporting another much bigger and stronger chimp. And as soon as the chimp became alpha, after 2 weeks he overthrew him. And many times that happens on a one-on-one fight, because now you're at the same level, you have the same allies, and the other chimps will let you fight it out and decide who is the top dog. And that is what happened in that instance. It knew that without getting this one who has already these supporters, I will not become alpha. So let me support him, he becomes, then I take him off.
Okay, that was a good one. So back to this experiment that you did.
Yes.
The study that was, whose result was the study. What was hard about it? What was simple about it?
Well, the difficulty with most studies is to be able to design the experiments, to produce, to reflect what it is that you are actually trying to get. Basically, to design the experiment to be able to answer the question to answer the question that you have as your theory, yeah, your research question. That is always the most difficult part, because it's sometimes difficult to know how the chimps will respond to the design. Like I said, they make decisions. Now we were wondering, will the chimps be able to identify that this is a picture of a fruit? Should we have to make it 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional? Then we relied on previous studies where now someone else had done a study to say chimps can recognize So they were simply showing them pictures of other chimps within the community. And we relied on that. Okay, yes, now we can use visual prints. So we rely a lot on data that has previously been collected to be able to help us to design these studies. And that is sometimes the tricky bit on being able to, and then also to determine what is the reward. What is it going to make it worthwhile? Because you may come up with a reward that the chimp feels, it is not worth going through all this trouble to even participate in the study. Then some of the studies where we need cooperation, determining which individuals, again, we'll have to go back and rely on our observational data to know who is likely to cooperate with who in terms of the individual chimps. So the design is the most difficult part. Once you get that over with, it is pretty easy. Another tough bit may be a training phase to make sure that they understand the experiment and know that this is what they need to do to get a reward, or but of course you variate it. Sometimes you may actually show them a picture of a fruit and there's actually nothing inside. So will they know that you tricked them, and how will they respond to that? So that also becomes tricky and sometimes difficult. I remember we designed sometime a study whereby it is like a puzzle box. They would have to solve the puzzle and get a reward. And the puzzle keeps changing. It's not always the same place that they will have to touch or do. And sometimes the chimps get frustrated because they are unable to solve the puzzle and simply destroy the entire thing. So those are some of the challenges we go through. So you have to make sure that you make it easy enough for them to be able to not get that level of frustration. So that's the difficult bit of it. But once you get that solved, then the rest is easy. Then after that, you just simply collect data of a determined period of time with your sample number that you want to get, and then the rest is easy. You do analysis and make your inferences.
Yes. Apart from this study, so what else? You always doing a lot of studies. What else are you currently studying that we should expect very soon?
Well, we are modifying. Like this study, you make a presentation and peers ask you questions and you say, okay, but if you added this element into it, that would either strengthen your theory that they can actually rationalize or weaken it. And that advises future studies. So we are continuously evolving these studies to test. Literally what we're trying to test is the level of intelligence. And then we compare. Many of these studies we also do in humans. Our counterparts, not ourselves. They compare with toddlers in schools and compare and see to what level is the intellect the same. So I would say that is another aspect that is going to come to see, because even as we do the studies, we do different age ranges. Say chimp of this age, chimp of this age. We know at a certain level chimps lose interest. Also, we know depending on the sex. From all the studies we've done, we know that females are a little bit more intelligent than the males. They are a bit more patient to be able to solve problems, and they cooperate better than males. So we design future studies based on that. We're like, if we bring in a new element, we need to make the males cooperate better. If we put an element of not simply a reward of food, if we maybe give another reward, we need to make it better to cooperate with another male or with a female, something like that. So that is how we do subsequent studies, but mostly it is to reinforce the theories we have. Then along the way, you may develop another theory. Like you develop a theory and say maybe chimps, I'm trying to think outside the box here and say, can a chimp, let's say, recognize a vocal command or instruction or communication from a member that is not of its community? Yeah. Will it be able to know that this grunt actually means this? Because they also have their own language within the language. There are those things which are universal, but there are those which are unique to the community. Yeah, so those are some of the questions that we now come up with, and then we start thinking, how can we design the study? And then we design it and we try it out.
Okay. I think second last for me is there is another study, recent study which I read and which I featured in my newsletter about chimps in the wild, those ones that are still in the forest, the fruits that they eat, that they like, they contain alcohol, the elements that make up alcohol. And then when actually the study was saying that the alcohol elements in those wild fruits are very strong, to the extent that I think a chimp would be taking alcohol that is 3 times of what humans would take in a day.
Yeah.
Have you observed that? Do chimps drink alcohol if you give it to them?
Generally speaking, well, let's first define alcohol. Alcohol normally comes from a process of fermentation of sugars, and there have been so many stories, not even just experiments, where you've heard about it. Monkeys that eat certain fruits that have lay on the ground and fermented for some time. Elephants, these stories about them, hyenas, whatever. We've not done those experiments on Ngamba because particularly we believe introducing alcohol compromises their welfare. And first and foremost, our research must not compromise the welfare of the individual. So that's why we don't do any invasive studies. We don't want to cause any harm to that will in any way compromise their welfare. So we don't. But that said, we've had instances where chimps might escape for one reason or another. Maybe there's a bit of negligence, maybe the fence has failed and they've not yet noticed, and they come out. Their immediate motivation is to go and look for food. And they know exactly where the food store is, and they know where the restaurant is. So those are the places they go to first. And there's one behavior that we have always thought, where did they learn to do this? They know how to open bottles with cups. They bite and take off the cup. And like I said, they learn from each other. Now, probably, these are chimps that were probably in captivity first, living with humans, and they learned from humans how to open the bottles. And others have simply observed them and done the same, and it has worked. So they already know that these bottles have fluid in them, which is sweet, sodas and what. And one particular time they escaped, and we had a delivery of drinks, and they sat down and helped themselves. But some of the drinks were beers, and a bottle. So they opened and tasted. And I was not there, but the guys were like, okay, they tested this one and it was not so nice. They tested another one, it was not so bad, they kept drinking it. And that particular chimp actually got several bottles and went to hide. And drank, and we looked for the chimp. It had blacked out somewhere in some corner until late at night when now it came true. And now I came looking for the guys because it now found itself in a strange place and probably was experiencing some hangover. And so alcohol itself affects animals the same way that it affects us. And we've seen it in lots of animals, the different intoxicants they get. And out there in the wild, they do get exposed to some fermented fruits, cocoa, some figs and nuts that undergo, depending on the season and the conditions, a fermentation process such that when they are consumed, they may still taste nice, but they have levels of alcohol which their physiology is not used to, and they get the effects of getting drunk, so to speak. So it happens. One thing that would be interesting to study is that do they actually seek out these fermented fruits and actively look for them in those particular periods of time so that they get drunk? That would be an interesting research to be done.
There are always a lot of things that they're about, and for me, these studies actually surprise me. They're always interesting, their findings are always interesting, even on the studies that we are used to in medicine, and the studies on wild animals, very interesting. So finally, my final question would be, it's related to the first question that I asked you. After years of living with chimps, knowing them, what did you wish every person, let's say a person has never seen a chimp, what did you wish every person should know about chimpanzees something that might change the way they perceive them?
Yes, that's a very important question, and it is something I'm quite passionate about. I believe that as human beings, we only care for what we know. And if we don't know, then there is no reason for us to care. There is no connection, there is no... But once, the reason why people are connected to their pets is because they get to know them. They get to know their behaviors, they get to know their character, and they create that bond. They get a certain reward from them, either an emotional reward or companionship or whatever. So until the rest of us humans, and particularly Ugandans, get to learn about chimpanzees, that will help us to relate to them. Yeah? Once you know the chimpanzees, first of all, are very much like us, they behave very much like us, that already creates a bond, a virtual bond between us and them. And that picks, as a normal human, you get curious and you want to know a little bit more. And the more you learn about these animals, the more you care for them, and the more that you will be willing to protect them and to protect their habitats and protect their way of life, so to speak, their wild way of life. And that is the only way we're going to be able to conserve these chimpanzees, by spreading the word and getting people to know a little bit more about them. And that's why we run some of these tests and experiments that we do and these studies, to help people understand chimps more and to relate with them. That is why some of our studies, we do the same correlating studies with humans and show that relationship. So you know what? Chimps also have feelings. Animals have feelings. Animals also feel sorrow, also feel joy. And once we relate to that, we don't want another individual animal to go through the same bad emotions that we would go through, and we'll end up caring for them, and therefore we'll end up protecting them better. So that is really what drives us in doing the work that we do, and particularly myself. The more awareness that we can create about the chimpanzee as a species, the more we can improve its conservation status.
Thank you, Doctor. It has been a pleasure talking to you, learning from you a lot about chimps and their behavior. I look forward to interacting with you more and more.
Please, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you too.